Hey everybody, Samuel Allred here. Welcome back to the Persistence Outdoors podcast. I've been preparing for some backpacking hunts lately, and I thought this would be a good opportunity to do a pack dump for you all. Basically, just going through all the gear I take on this type of hunt. There's lots of information out there on every single piece of backpacking gear you could possibly imagine. People weighing the pros and cons of tents, this hiking boot versus that hiking boot, down sleeping bags versus synthetic sleeping bags. And I've even talked about stuff like this on the podcast, right? I've talked about down jackets, rain jackets, shelter systems, etc. But sometimes I think it's helpful to get more of a bird's eye view of everything. Personally, I learned so much by observing how other people do things. I've noticed over the years that I can learn from books, the internet, lectures, whatever, but it often doesn't fully click until I see someone else do it or I have the chance to try it myself. And at other times, I'll be doing something just fine, but when I observe someone else, they've come up with a much better way to do whatever it is. I think it's the same way with your backpacking and hunting kit. It definitely gets easier to pack and choose your kit over time because you're able to reference your own experience. But when starting out, emulating others is one of the best ways to learn. So what I want to do today is go through all my gear to give you an idea of what a complete backpacking hunt kit looks like, and also to give you some context for why I bring the things I do. I'll try not to leave anything out, and hopefully this will be helpful for you and allow you to see how all the different pieces of the kit work together. All right, so truth be told, I don't have a packed bag here in front of me, but I do have my master packing list. And I've broken up all the items on my list into different categories and kits. So what I've done is made it sort of modular in a sense, and I have a list of my clothing, my hunt kit, my camping kit, my kill kit, my toiletries, mess kit, electronics. I have a bunch of different categories, and that way I can quickly adapt my backpack, what I pack in my bag, to the type of hunt that I'm going on. So if I go for a week-long backpacking hunt, like I might go for spring bear, I'm going to bring all the things in my camping kit, all the clothing layers, my hunt kit, my kill kit. But if I'm just going out for a day hunt, I don't need everything in my camping kit. I might just bring my 10 essentials and leave the rest and just bring my hunt kit, kill kit, and the suitable clothing, right? So having it broken out into different categories is very helpful. And that's kind of how we're going to go through it today. So let's start with clothing. For the purposes of this pack dump, we're talking about a spring bear hunt, a backpacking bear hunt. And this means that I have to choose my layers appropriately. So some of the first things I have on here are a rain shell and rain pants, just my rain gear. This may be beefy rain gear. It could be lightweight rain gear, just depending on how much rain you expect. I'm just using the rain gear I have. I have a 2-layer rain jacket. That's okay, but I decided not to upgrade this year. And then I have some really nice 2.5-layer rain pants that have some zippers for venting, and I think those are going to be great. Mostly are going to live in my pack, but if it does rain and I still want to be out there, or I get caught on my way to a different campsite, I can just throw that rain gear on and be good. I've also got on my list a base layer top and base layer bottom. Usually for me, these are going to be synthetic or merino. I really like merino wool. This hunt, I'm probably not going to bring a base layer top. What I'm going to do is wear a t-shirt, so a wool t-shirt. Then over that, I'm going to wear a grid fleece quarter zip. It's just a synthetic quarter zip. It's kind of a good active layer. I can still do a decent amount of hiking in it, and it cuts the chill, but it's not so heavy that it makes me sweat a lot. Over that, for this hunt, I'm going to bring an insulation layer, and that's going to be my heavy puffy. I'm expecting to encounter lows of maybe 30 in the evenings and maybe highs of even 65 or 70 during the day. And so it's quite a temperature swing. And what I want that heavy puffy for is actually for glassing. I get up in the early morning or in the late evenings and I'm sitting somewhere on a high knob. And what you're going to get are these thermals that are blowing up and down the mountains. So you're constantly dealing with wind. And having that puffy is going to be really nice to cut the wind and keep me warm even when I'm staying still. You could also use a heavy fleece for your insulation layer. And then finally, I'm going to throw on my rain shell over the top of that if it rains or if I really need an extra layer to cut the wind. On the bottom, I could have my base layers on. I actually kind of have a problem with base layers in these warmer months, like in the spring, because I start to hike and I immediately overheat. So if I do wear a base layer, I'm going to bring the lightest base layer possible, but likely I will just wear my hunting pants and then throw on my rain pants over those if I get cold enough or need to cut the wind. And that's probably going to be enough. I could imagine being a little bit chilly if I'm just sitting glassing. Some people like to bring puffy pants or some other insulation layer for their legs. That's a good idea too if you've got them. I'm of course going to bring underwear and wool socks. I might bring an extra pair of underwear if I want to. I always will bring 2 pairs of socks, 2 pairs of wool socks, because then if you get one pair wet, you can put the other pair on. So say you cross a stream and it goes over your boot. Well, on the other side, you can just take off your boot, take off your wet socks, pour the water out of your boot, put on your dry socks, and then you're going to be a lot happier than just hiking in wet socks. Or if it's in the evening and one of your pairs of socks got wet, you can put on the other pair. That's really nice. So it's always a good idea to have 2 pairs of socks, especially in cold and wet conditions. Underwear, I'll bring, 1 pair of often like synthetic active underwear, maybe 2 pairs if I want to, but if it's just a couple days, I might just go with 1, honestly. One thing that I think everybody should bring is a brimmed hat. You might not expect it, but a brim is really helpful, especially when you're in the rain and especially when you're glassing. In those evenings, the sun gets low, and just depending on your angle, you may be looking towards the sun a little bit. It's helpful to have that brim to block out the sun and just give you a better picture in your binoculars or your spotting scope. And you can also use the brim of your hat to help stabilize your binoculars with your hand. So you hold onto your binoculars with your hand, then put your fingers up and press them against the brim of your hat. And it's really great for stabilizing your binoculars when you're standing or even sitting down. I also like to bring a pair of gloves. My hands get cold very easily. It's always a trade-off because you have the dexterity issue. So what I've done is just got some neoprene like running gloves. I think they're Head brand. You get them at Costco. And it gives me just enough dexterity that I can take a shot if I need to. They're not the warmest, but I like the balance between dexterity and warmth. I will also bring gaiters on an early spring bear hunt. They're really helpful for any time you have mud or if you're crossing streams or you're going through some snow. Later in the season, when it dries out some, I may not need them, but early in the season, I'm likely to wear gaiters. On my clothing list, I also have boots and then sandals or Crocs or something for crossing streams, if that's something you think you'll need to do. All right, let's move on to the camping kit. So first off, I have my sleeping system. So I have my sleeping bag, sleeping pad, and some sort of pillow. My sleeping bag, I've been running a 20-degree synthetic sleeping bag for as long as I can remember. It was like one of my first big purchases as a kid. I still remember walking into REI with my mom to buy it, and it's been really great. Over time, it's maybe become a little bit less warm, and I'm a pretty cold person in general, so recently I was gifted a down sleeping bag, and it's a 15-degree bag. So I'm hoping it will be a little bit warmer and just a bit of an upgrade over my old synthetic one. 20 degrees, 15 degrees, those are really versatile bags. You can use them in the shoulder seasons. You can use them in the summer. You might be on top of your bag or have it open, but you can use them. And then in the winter, you can just put in a liner or wear some more clothing. So they tend to be really versatile. And if you're a little bit colder, maybe go for a 15. If you're a little bit warmer, maybe go for a 20. The sleeping pad I bring is inflatable. It's a Nemo Tensor 20R, but it's one of the older versions, so it's pretty narrow. You look at it and you think it'd be comfortable, but I don't know, maybe I just don't think inflatable pads are that comfortable. It's better than sleeping on the ground though. One thing I don't like about my pad is that it takes a really long time to blow up just because of the volume and the way it's constructed. But again, I think it's better than sleeping on the ground, and it's easier to pack than a foam sleeping pad, which is going to be really bulky. So I like the inflatable ones. I might look for a better one in the future, but right now that's what I've got. Next on my list is 50 feet of paracord. 50 feet is just kind of an arbitrary number, but think of all the things that you'll need paracord for. If you are hanging a bear bag, you'll want paracord, and that's going to need to be at least 30 feet minimum, maybe more. If you kill an animal, you may want to hang it in a tree, and then you'll be cutting short lengths of paracord. So 50 feet, maybe more, depending on the hunt, you might use it. You might find ways to use it. So don't get stuck with too little cordage. That's definitely important. You do want plenty of cordage because it's going to be a pain if you don't have it. Next, I have my water purification system and water bottles. Usually I just use water purification tabs like Potable Aqua, but you could also use a SteriPen or a filter. You can check out the podcast called Wilderness Water Treatment, a pretty recent podcast if you want to learn more about that. I have my 10 essentials, so that's going to include things like my compass, my map, my camp knife, my headlamp and extra batteries, first aid kit, emergency food, fire starters, all of those things. There's probably a couple other ones on the list that I'm missing at the moment, but all of the 10 essentials I'm going to bring. I also did a podcast about that. 10 essentials, not just for Boy Scouts, so go check that out as well. 10 essentials are something that I would bring on a day hunt, even if I wasn't going out and camping for multiple days. Also on my list is duct tape. Duct tape is kind of like paracord. You just use it for all sorts of things, whether it's taping your boots together that came apart or for first aid purposes. There's just always things that you can use duct tape for. So having some duct tape is great. You don't need to bring a whole heavy roll, but you can wrap some around your water bottle or your trekking pole or bring just a little bit of it, and it's really helpful to have. Some other things that I'm going to bring are sunscreen, bug repellent. I should have mentioned this for sleeping, I'm also going to bring an eye mask and earplugs. Depending on if I'm sleeping with a buddy in my tent, I may want those earplugs so that I'm not awake from them snoring all night. An eye mask is also really helpful on those long spring days where it gets light at like 4:30 a.m. and it doesn't get dark until 9 or something. So having an eye mask might help you sleep a little longer if you plan to do so, or if you want to take a nap in the middle of the day. One thing that I don't have in my camp kit, but I would like to have is a tarp. And I think I would use this just kind of as part of my rain gear. So I would look for something pretty lightweight. I might use it as my actual shelter. I'm not sure, but it would be nice to have a tarp to cover yourself around camp if the weather goes south, or if you're out glassing and the weather gets nasty and you just want to hole up but stay where you are. It'd be really nice to have a tarp. So that's something I've been looking at to add to my kit. Another piece of shelter is just going to be your tent with poles and stakes. Usually I use a 2-person tent, something like an REI Half Dome. It's pretty versatile. You can do different things. You could go without a tent and just use a tarp. You could use a bivy sack, whatever you want to do, but just that main shelter piece for you. Then I also have my stove. I use an MSR Pocket Rocket. It's a pretty decent stove for just boiling water. And so my camp cooking is pretty basic, pretty simple, but that stove screws on to a fuel canister, and then I put my cooking pot on top of it, boil some water, and do whatever I need with that. I always make sure to have a cooking utensil or a metal spork. I've used a lot of plastic or polymer sporks that just break. And so they're nice because they're light, but you're going to go through a handful of them. So now I just have a long metal, it's like aluminum spork, and it works great for cooking and eating. And I've had it for years now and it hasn't broken. Finally, in my camp kit, I will have a little bit of camp soap in like a tiny little bottle. You can get biodegradable camp soap where you just need a drop of it to clean your dishes. It's highly concentrated. So a little camp soap, maybe a little scrubby pad to help clean dishes, and then also some sort of bag that I can use as a bear bag. Sometimes I might just hang my whole pack or use my sleeping bag stuff sack, depending on how many people there are and how much food we have. Speaking of food, sometimes I will bring a mess kit, and that would be my spork, a little bowl, and a little mug or cup. Now, more and more often, I'm just not even bringing the mug because I don't drink that many hot drinks. And more often, I don't even bring the bowl because I just have a small cooking pot and I can eat right out of that. But if I'm with a group, I might bring a bowl, and that's helpful for cooking for multiple people. I mentioned camp soap and a little scrubby pad. Sometimes I don't even use that, and I'm just rinsing out my bowl, wiping it out with some grass, and it really doesn't bother me that much. Only time I need a scrubby is when I've cooked something to the bottom of the pot, which happens with my aluminum pot fairly often. By the way, the pot is maybe a liter. It's not that big, might be a little bit smaller than that, and you just can adjust your pot size depending on how many people you need to cook for. But I've been considering not even bringing camp soap and a scrubby because why would I if I'm not even going to clean my dishes? So that'd be a way to save a little bit of weight and just have one less thing to worry about. Okay, let's talk for a moment about toiletries. Toiletries are pretty basic, but I am going to bring these into the backcountry. So a small toothbrush, a tiny thing of toothpaste, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and sometimes I bring tissue if I don't want to use my toilet paper. Toilet paper is obviously very important. I've started just bringing toilet paper with me even on day hunts and hand sanitizer because what I find, this is what happens to me. I get up super early, right? I get up at 3 or 4 a.m. so I can drive out to my place and get hiking before the sun comes up. Get out super early, and I kind of mess up my morning routine. And then I start hiking hard, and then by mid-morning, I eat a snack or something, and then I have to go to the bathroom. And so sometimes it just hits, and it's helpful to have some toilet paper and hand sanitizer. If you wear contacts, you also need to think about your contacts and contacts solution. I don't, but I've got it on my list for when I share it with other people. Let's get into some of the fun stuff, the hunt kit and the kill kit. So we've been talking about backpack hunting, right? Which means you'll need some sort of big backpack. The backpack that I use is made for backpackers. It's a Gregory Baltoro 65, and that means it has a 65-liter capacity approximately, which is about 3,900 cubic inches. So it's really not that big as far as hunting packs go. It's great for backpacking, but then when you start to add in a hunt kit and kill kit and then try to haul out an animal, all that extra meat, I'm wishing for more capacity, but it's what I've got, and so I make it work. And for a lot of things, it's been really great. A big backpack, though, is something you'll want. It needs to be sturdy enough to carry some meat, and you can kind of choose between having a backpack that has a large internal capacity and a backpack that has a meat shelf. Some people really like the meat shelf on their backpack and think that's the way to go. Other people just prefer to have a really large internal capacity and put their meat and everything in the same bag. So it's personal preference. It probably also kind of depends on what you can afford. There's some really high-end backpacks out there. Other people, like myself, are just going to use the backpacking pack that they have and take extra trips if they need to. And that's fine. You just figure out how to work with what you've got. In my backpack, I always carry a pack cover. You don't necessarily need one if you pack your clothing in waterproof bags or Ziploc bags on the inside of your pack, but a pack cover does help your pack not get wet and heavy, which is pretty nice. So I always have a pack cover. In my hunt kit, I also include trekking poles. Trekking poles, especially for spring bear hunting. In spring bear hunting, spot and stalk hunting, you're just going to be climbing some really steep stuff, like 35-degree slope angles. And it just makes sense to bring some trekking poles. They're going to save your knees, save your ankles. They may save you from tumbling down the hill. So I highly recommend some trekking poles. I've been having a couple issues with my knees lately, so I've just committed to the trekking poles. My trekking poles aren't even trekking poles. They're just ski poles that I got for $25 or $30 at a secondhand gear garage. So they don't have to be fancy. They just have to support you. And I would highly recommend them for a hunt like this. Of course, in your hunt kit, you are going to have your rifle and rifle accessories. I have these listed out on my packing list because I want to make sure that I remember them. It'd be easy to look at my rifle case and be like, yeah, I've got my rifle in there. But then say I had unattached my sling, or if I had a bipod, maybe I didn't have my bipod attached. So you might want to list them out so you make sure you've got everything you want to bring. You also need to have ammo, of course, that is suited for your gun and sighted in. You want to bring binoculars. I think binoculars are good on pretty much every hunt. There's hardly a hunt that I wouldn't bring binoculars on. Even in thick stuff, even in close proximity to the animals, I think binoculars are a great idea, and I just consider them a basic part of my kit for every hunt. Now, I won't always bring the spotting scope. The spotting scope I will use on a spring bear hunt because I plan to get up on a hill and look for bears across a canyon, right? But for some hunts, I might not pack the spotting scope and the scope tripod because it gets really heavy. I don't have the nicest high-end spotting scope or tripod. You know, my tripod isn't carbon fiber. It's something that I got at Target ages ago. Target of all places, right? And it was for my camera originally, and now I use it for my spotting scope, and it's fine. It's nothing fancy. It's not amazing, but it works. And same with my spotting scope. You know, it's not super high end, but it gives me 18 or 20 power pretty well, and that helps me spot animals. So I will bring it when I think it's worth the wait. But on other hunts, I may just default to my binoculars. In my hunt kit, As well, I include hearing protection and hunter's orange when I need it. I'll also bring my rangefinder. My rangefinder, like my other optics, is not that incredible. It's just something that I got off Amazon. It's pretty much a golf rangefinder, I think. They made it in camo, so it looks like a hunting thing, but it was $80. It's fine as long as it doesn't get too cold. And I do like having it. Sometimes I wish I had just spent the money on a better one, but it does the job usually. And so I will bring it in my hunt kit. And I recently got a binocular harness, so I'll wear my binoculars and my rangefinder on my chest. I think that will be really helpful to keep my binoculars from bouncing the whole time I'm hiking, just bouncing on my chest and then also bouncing into the buckle of my backpack of the hip belt. So I'm excited to try that out. I was wondering if I was just kind of giving in to hunting trends, and being peer pressured into it, but I've hiked around with it a couple times and the binocular harness is really nice. The next part of my kit is my kill kit. These are items that I pretty much only touch if I actually kill an animal. So I keep them in a little bag and I just throw it in the bottom of my pack. And I don't have to access it unless I actually kill an animal. I make it sound like I don't have much faith in myself, right? But the truth is, more hunts than not, I'm not going to kill something. So I keep it separate, and that way I don't have to sift through these items when I'm trying to access something else. So in my kill kit, usually I keep my signed license, and I will also keep my tags for the hunt. I will keep a knife in there. Sometimes I may just bring my camp knife and use that for my skinning knife, but sometimes I'll also have a skinning knife in there that I never touch really, except for when I'm actually skinning an animal. And that way I can keep it sharp and I know I will never forget my knife because I've got one in my kill kit. I bring a knife sharpener. Right now I use a Work Sharp knife sharpener. It's their field sharpener. I like it a lot. I may get a smaller sharpening stone or just a small diamond sharpener that is a little bit lighter and less bulky just to save on a little bit of weight. In my kill kit, I also keep my game bags and a couple black trash bags. Some people say bring some contractor bags. Contractor bags are going to be even better. You can use them for all sorts of things. You can use them for keeping rain off meat. You could put the meat into the contractor bag, double bag it, and then keep it cool in a stream. You really want to make sure that it doesn't get wet, right? But it is an option. You could put a gut pile on a contractor bag and move it a ways. You could use it as a sled for a quarter of meat in snow. You could even use your contractor bags to cross a stream, use them kind of like waders if you wanted to. So contractor bags are very versatile, and I like to have a couple heavy black trash bags available, maybe 2 to 4. In my kill kit, I also may bring some latex gloves. They're nice to keep your hands clean when you are skinning and gutting the animal. And also, if you have any nicks on your hand before you start the process, they can help to prevent infection in your hands. Now, latex gloves aren't going to protect you if you cut yourself with a sharp skinning knife, but if you're being careful, which you always should be, they may be helpful to keep you from getting infected. A couple other things in my kill kit are some zip ties. Zip ties are nice for tags or for hanging meat, but usually I've got a zip tie so that I can attach my tag to the animal, and it's a lot easier than trying to tie it on with some parachute cord. I may also have hunter's orange in my kill kit for the pack out. If you think about packing out some antlers in a heavily hunted area, maybe a good idea to throw some hunter's orange up there so that nobody else makes a very poor decision, right? And then finally, in my kill kit, I will have some proxy statements. And these are just for if I have a buddy who's helping me and he wants to take a quarter or some of the meat, I can sign that for him, and that way he won't get in trouble if he runs into a warden. All right, well, I know this has been pretty rapid fire, but we're getting to the end of the list here. The last few things that are very important are your electronics and then possibly your bear defense if you're going into an area with bears. So your electronics are going to be your phone, a phone cable, a battery pack or battery charger, downloaded maps, and then maybe an extra camera if you want to take pictures. So your phone is important because likely you're using a mapping app like OnX Hunt. And if you are, you need to be able to run your phone for the duration of your hunt. So I usually will bring my phone and then also have a charged battery pack that can charge my phone about 3 times. And that will be good for a couple days at least. I'll usually put my phone on airplane mode. I will have my maps downloaded already, and it won't use too much battery in airplane or battery saving mode. But I do want to make sure that I have a way to charge it again in case it dies, and then I wouldn't have access to my maps. Now, I think it's always a good idea to have some sort of printed map in case your phone does die or you break it. Even if it's not a very detailed map, it's helpful to have maybe a big picture map so you can then look at your compass and say, okay, if I head north, I will hit this highway. Or if I head southeast, I'm going to eventually hit this town or hit this road or whatever it is. But electronics are important for modern hunters, so you want to be prepared for that and make sure you have enough battery to last you for your whole trip. Bear defense tools are also important. So if you're going into grizzly country, you're going to want some sort of bear defense. And really, I call this backup bear defense because if you have your hunting weapon, your rifle, then that's your best bear defense. If you're in a situation where you're being charged by a grizzly aggressively, then use your rifle first if you can. But sometimes you will put your rifle down or you won't have quick access. So you do need something that you have quick access to that's on your person at all times. And that's likely going to be bear spray or a handgun. So bear spray, you just want your canister and then a holster, something that you can wear on you. If you have a handgun, you want to make sure you have your handgun, your holster, your ammo, and then maybe an extra magazine or extra ammo, depending on the capacity of your handgun. So besides food, that's everything I'm going to bring on a backpacking hunt. And I'm not going to cover food here because it's kind of got some nuances of its own. So I may do a podcast on backpacking food later. But besides food, that's everything. If there's anything you think I missed, I'd love to hear about it. Just shoot me an email at persistenceoutdoors2022@gmail.com or drop a comment below in Spotify, and I'd love to hear what you guys bring that I usually don't. If you're new to backpacking, hopefully this gave you some ideas for your own kit, but remember that your kit doesn't have to be exactly the same. You should tailor your kit to your own needs and preferences and to the requirements of the hunt. For example, if I were doing an early season mule deer hunt and the weather was still super warm, I'd likely be wearing different clothing and maybe be packing a different sleeping bag and shelter system. Instead of a full tent, I might just grab a tarp, or instead of a 15-degree sleeping bag, maybe I'd go with a quilt if I had the option. On the other hand, a lot of things in my kit are going to stay the same from hunt to hunt, like my tent essentials and my kill kit. Usually there's not much variation there. I've got one quick tip for you before I wrap this up. After you go on a hunt, sort through your gear and take special note of the items you didn't use. Some of these are going to be emergency items that you need to take whether you use them or not, but others will be items that it turns out you just don't need. So, for example, you might find that you packed a bowl and a mug, but you never used either because you just ate or drank straight from your pot. Or you keep packing an extra shirt, but you never change your shirt anyways. So by sorting through everything, it will help you pare down your kit and reduce your load. I think that's all for today. Thanks so much for supporting this podcast, and I'll catch you next week.